Welcome to the Digital Brand Builder Podcast, where we bring you the best growth strategies from the world's experts to help build your business fast. And now, here's your host, Mark Fidelman.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Digital Brand Builder Podcast. Today, we're doing something new. Now, we've done influencer marketing, we've done PR, but we've never done how do you pitch, specifically around pitching. Even if you don't know the influencer, even if you don't know the press, it's about pitch these people. And joining me is Amanda Whitcroft, and she is out of New York. Don't hold that against her. And before we jump in, Amanda, would you introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks for having me, Mark. My name's Amanda Whitcroft, as you mentioned. I own Panda PR Marketing. I've been in business a little over 3 years now, and I represent clients within the tech, healthcare, and hospitality verticals. And I support them, as you mentioned, in PR, traditional PR, influencer marketing, and other services.
Excellent. So let's just jump right into it. So when we talk about pitching press, pitching influencers, what do you mean by that?
So pitching influencers and PR is really, it's an ever-changing thing. So especially in times of COVID, where you could develop even a 30-day strategy or a 60-day strategy, that you don't see that really happening anymore. And so what's happening is you're really paying attention to the market trends, what's working in that week, and you have to really stay up with the times and adapt accordingly. So press releases for traditional PR, for example, where you, if you have, for example, a client within the sustainability sector, and it's all sustainability, ESG is a huge, huge trending topic of conversation. So to insert your client, whether they, are in the food and beverage industry or they're in more of the financial sector, you really want to find what is the sweet spot and pitch accordingly. And for influencers, same thing. It's keeping up with who is trending, who's talking about things that are relevant to your client, and finding the people who are on brand to insert themselves into the conversation.
I mean, I think of influencers and press as, I always like to dumb it down to a high school. They're like the hottest kids in high school, right? And so everyone's hitting on them. Everyone's putting forth their best pitch. Everyone's doing what they can to get them to go out with them, at least for a date or two. So what is it that you recommend people do in order to get the attention of, the hot kids?
So I tend to sign clients based on knowing that I can get behind their meaning or their mission. So once I do that, and that's of course the first step, then I'm able to, whether it's the press or an influencer in this case, know that I am coming to them with something that, because I also pride myself as being a firm that does not work on a cash compensation basis. I like to work on a product compensation. And in fact, I think the whole influencer is charging, and having these rate cards is fleeting. I hope that's the case, because I think to have an authentic and genuine campaign and to have people actually want, your customers and consumers engaging with that product or that brand, you want to see not just a paid partnership, you want to see, a product compensation partnership. Where is that in bold on Instagram? Because I think that's when okay, this influencer got behind this because they actually believe in the brand. So so to answer your question, one client I have that's my healthcare client, we offer 2 PPE kits, which PPE kits, consist of 100 masks, 50 gloves, disinfectant wipes, hand sanitizers. And during this time, especially when we were in the midst of a really bad time during this pandemic, that was very in high demand, even for your essential workers who were lacking this. So when we went to those influencers who were, whoever you deem to be essential, and that's in healthcare vertical, that's in hospitality, that's in education, they were so happy to accept these 2 PPE kits in exchange for posting a static post and a story highlight with a swipe up. And that was really, and you're still navigating influencers who request, a budget or they want, but all in all, we were securing anywhere between 4 to 5 influencers a week on a product compensation basis, which I think is pretty good.
Okay. That is pretty good, especially if they've got, the level of influence that makes a difference for these brands. It's always tough to tell, unless you've been in the industry for a while, who can move the needle, who doesn't move the needle. So, you kind of have to go into influencer marketing with open eyes and to know that it's not always going to work. Especially, I find on Instagram, it's even if they've got a lot of followers, it doesn't always translate into brand attention. In fact, sometimes it doesn't lead to much at all because they're fake followers.
Yeah.
So, just knowing the industry and knowing the influencers, I think is relatively important to be able to set the expectations. And that's why, working with somebody like you who probably has good relationship with these influencers already is worth paying for.
Right.
Okay. So let's get into the specifics of pitching. How do you know, let's say you're pitching, I'm going to make it tough for you. Let's say you're pitching a new crypto token. And since this is such a hot topic right now, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but I think you can handle it. And, it's a brand new token with interesting tokenomics. And for those of you that don't know what cryptocurrency is, shame on you, first of all. Second of all, these are either currencies or they're assets or they're both. And there's plenty of companies that are out there that are putting out tokens that could just be used as currency, or they could be an asset, or they could do special things, like magic pixie dust type things. If you're dealing with some of the new tokens in DeFi that are coming out. So how would you begin to think about pitching influencers in that space? Because they're kind of like Burning Man meets, I like it. It's a Burning Man meets a businessman. It's the businessman that moonlights as a Burning Man kid, on weekends.
Right. I think that, you'd have to look, obviously you'd have to see what the crypto client is doing within the space. And from there, you'd have to come up with how this influencer could accomplish by creating some sort of video content, exploring the current trends within the crypto space. And the followers of the influencers, would have to remain up to date as well on the market trends of crypto. So it's a bit of due diligence in that regard. But, typically an influencer with any devoted kind of following and who's a thought leader in the space, you're able to pitch them, and they're able to have a sense of whether or not they want to engage in a partnership.
So you pitch them. Is there a certain technique that you use? Do you offer money? Do you kind of take a look at what they've been doing and try to match the pitch to what you think they like to do? What is it how would you frame that?
So I typically, no one reads anymore. A lot of people don't. Especially I think influencers are getting inundated with so many different partnerships, especially those that are trending and have the following. So it's really about engaging them with photos and posts of things that have previously been done. So it's also on the brand, the client, to have some sort of content, and usually video is really effective. But even seeing other influencers and people with the product or using the service or whatever it may be, so that they're able to see what it looks like. And from there, then they're more, they would probably be more responsive from there, seeing what it looks like and how they would look with that if they were to post.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's just such a unique field of crypto. It's not like that in other industries, and they're just inundated. And it seems like with crypto, they have to become almost an ambassador, which is somebody that's just an evangelist for you for that period of time.
Right.
So working on pitches that get ambassadorship and full commitment from them is challenging.
Right.
So let's go to the PR side, and I'm going to make it a little bit easier. Let's say that you have you're a software company, and you want the press to cover your new widget that's coming out. What does the pitch look like? How do you craft it? How do you put it together? Do you use press releases? What is it that you do?
So, of course, we would do a lot of research around, what that widget would be, and the software, of course. We would look into their direct competitors. That's a first. We would see who are their competitors, how are they being talked about in the news, what's trending in that space. And then we're able to, and of course, we have templates of press releases, so we're able to take that and then cater accordingly to how the competitor is being received. But of course, we don't want to be the competitor, but knowing where they're being placed so that we're able to take that and go, okay, so here's how we want to be placed. But it also depends on the stage of which the company is in. If they're a startup, for example, it's a bit harder to do a strategy, and it's a bit more of throwing spaghetti to the wall and seeing what sticks and seeing, building a foundation. Otherwise, if they're a little more established, it's then going, okay, well, here's what you have so far. And then again, seeing how we can insert them in the conversation of what's trending.
Okay. And how do you find out what's trending? How do you craft that pitch?
So we have the beautiful platform Google. So, you go into Google, but you also go into all your social media platforms. You go to Twitter, Facebook, even Instagram now. And you look at how these things are being received, who's engaging with them, who are the consumers, who are the thought leaders, especially LinkedIn for the software industry. Seeing who those thought leaders are, seeing who is following them, who's engaging with their posts. And it's a lot of due diligence, and it's a bit labor intensive, but going down that rabbit hole is so critical to drafting a press release that is going to work.
Yeah. Do you find that press releases are still working?
I do. And in fact, now it's, granted, they're again, people don't read, just like influencer marketing, but your headline, your subject line, which I think you did this on another episode, I believe I listened to, but your headline and the first couple sentences, and again, the picture, the content that you're providing within that release is everything as opposed to the text. But the press release in general, I know a lot of editors who are very old school who still want that press release. And I know a lot of new up and comers who really don't care. So it does depend.
Okay. When you're pitching these, let's just say reporters in the industry, and we'll stick with the software industry, is there a certain tell that they're going to work with you or not work with you? Or how do you determine who's going to be most favorable to you? Is it spray and pray? Is it more targeted? Are you trying to warm them up on social media? What are the tells that they potentially could work with you?
You mean in terms of like a client?
Well, like they're going to write about you.
Oh, it's, they're really, it's that first press release, but it's also about follow-up. And I always say that everything, I actually have a trick that most people are more inclined to open an email or even message in social media if you follow up, because, in the email, you get that RE with the semicolon, and guaranteed you're probably, and actually companies are doing this now where they initially send you a spam email with the RE because you are more inclined to open that instead of an email that doesn't have that in the front of it because you think you're in a conversation. So more times than not, but when I just initially pitch editors via email, I may get, and let's say I pitch 100 editors in day one of my campaign outreach. I get a couple responses here and there, but in day, and I wait a couple days. So in day 3 or day 4, when I follow up, that's when I get a huge response, because they are more likely to respond when you're following up, because it means you're doing the work. You're not just blindly sending this mass email in hopes of this being picked up. You're saying, I want this to be mentioned in your publication.
Yeah. The challenge I've seen is, rising above the noise and identifying the ones that are more likely or not to want to do a story with you. Do you think it comes down to the headline that you're sending to them, or is it your relationship with them?
I think the headline is certainly the appeal. I wouldn't say that gets them to write it. That's the appeal that gets them to either open the email or to just get the attention. It becomes the back and forth and the follow-up that actually becomes, are they going to, is this going to become a placement?
Yeah. And when I used to write for Forbes, the thing that really got me was, somebody took the time to learn what I was writing about, or they said, hey, you wrote for a competitor of ours. Why don't I give you the flip side, another angle here? And if the article was popular, because I always looked for, number of views, because that's how Forbes used to pay. That was interesting, because if there was an article with 200,000 views and somebody came up with a completely different opinion on it, and I knew I could continue the discussion, I would probably go with it to a point. So I think just to add in, looking at it from the other side is, make sure you know who I am and what I write about. And if you really do, and you've got a client or you've got something that you want to talk about that, I'd naturally want to write about, you're about 60-70% of the way there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And especially in this digital age, you want to provide all of the information as well. You don't want to create that, you do want to follow up, but you want links to everything you possibly can. So that means the website of the client, their Twitter, whatever social media platforms they may be on, you want to include all of that, because the last thing you want is for them to follow up and go, all right, what's that? Because that's, editors are very quick to kind of decline it because you didn't provide a very necessary piece of information. All
right. So you put together the pitch, you studied who you're going after, and we're a little out of turn here, but how do you find the right people? How do you and let's go back to influencers first. How do you find the right influencers? Are there tools that you use, or is it just like sheer determination on the social platforms? How do you find them? So
I've used quite a bit of platforms for influencer marketing, and I've never found a platform that I've been over the moon about. And that's because the platforms the algorithms that they've created, in my opinion, can only search for so much. And that's pretty much what you get in the bio and, what they deem themselves as far as, who they are. So if somebody says lifestyle influencer or, nurse mom or whatever that may be, it's very vapid in a way. And so since then it's, and I'm lucky enough to have a team that helps me do this as well. But and again, it's labor intensive, but it's the most effective. And it always has been very reliable, which is manually searching, finding these people, and because you could have an influencer that says lifestyle, that's very vague. But when you scroll through their Instagram or their TikTok and you find out a bit more, they're vegan, or they're, they have a passion for jewelry, or they have a side venture. A lot of influencers now have these side hustles where they're contributing for certain blogs or publications. And so all of a sudden that partnership becomes way more than just what you thought it would be, because they also contribute for something, or they have a side business that they're going to do a giveaway with. And so it's a bit of due diligence and rolling up your sleeves and finding those people. But at the end of the day, that becomes a much more, again, warranted partnership than these lists that would be generated from the platforms that are offered.
It's interesting because, a lot of people use these platforms to identify them, and there is no perfect one. I agree. I recommend Hyper. I have a friend that used to run it, and now he's doing some other things. But they're expensive, and if these are one-offs and all you want to do is find the influencers for your industry, then you probably should use Amanda's method. Let's go to press. Now, it would seem to me the press is a little bit easier to identify, but I don't want to jump the gun and answer for you. How do you identify the right press for your particular situation?
So actually, for that, I use a couple different databases. I actually use a platform called Press Hunt. It's a database of a little over 500,000 journalists, and I'm able to write in the industry. It generates the list, and it's pretty much on target. And after that, I do also a manual search, to include that because, marketing is such a fragmented industry. So I'm very much a firm believer and you have to fire on all cylinders, and you can't just rely on, one effort in order to secure something. And you have to have multiple pots in the stove and hope that one boils. So Press Hunt, my own list, the network that I've developed over the years, and also your white label placements. You have PR Newswire, you have Business Wire. So, and you have a lot of those where if you're not getting hits right away, you're able to utilize those to get the word out a little more quickly and tap into those resources and use that to, get the word out to a wider audience.
Okay. And then, are you a developer of relationships with these press people, or are you more spread out within your industry and you've got, you're basically reinventing the wheel every single time that you go out and try to get press for your clients? I built my company in hospitality. So that network is very much in place. Once we got into this pandemic and I pivoted and successfully, so I have been reinventing the wheel here a bit, as I think a lot of people have had to. And, there's, I think I do that and I do it well. And that's where I say that sometimes, and I've seen that you don't always have to have that network in place as much as you have to know how to pitch. Okay. So it's more important than having a network of press, because they might not write on the topic that your client, the product or service that they're offering.
At the end of the day, you really have to know what's trending, because even when I've had the network I've had, if my pitch was not fitting into the relevant conversation, they were like, sorry, we can't do this. There's no place for this right now. So a network is great to reach out to and get a response quickly, but it's about getting the placement. And the placement comes from knowing what is going to fit into the conversation.
Got it. Okay. Let's move just briefly before we wrap things up to how do you keep the press rolling in? I think it's one thing to learn how to pitch, learn how to find these people, but a consistent PR program that's effective and that works. How do you keep that going?
So that becomes, once you start building that foundation, it becomes kind of a domino effect. And if it doesn't, you're continually pitching to make sure that it does. So for example, with my client Orbital Assembly Corp, who is the startup tech company that's building the hotel in low orbit space, once I pitched to space.com and they did the article and they shared to their respective social platforms, it became a domino effect and the story went viral because space.com, which is of course a very well-known publication, shared to their Twitter and their Facebook, more publications who are following this platform picked it up. So CNN, name it. They were on the Stephen Colbert show. Even the Drew Barrymore show picked it up. And of course, this is a great topic of conversation, but they're a startup tech company. So it's really about, making sure, and that's where strategy comes in, where you're not just, it is throwing spaghetti to the wall, but it's also making sure that you're targeting the appropriate publications so that when it does hit, that those followers who are following that publication on the social platforms can see it. And it's again, that domino effect.
Okay. All right. Is there it's really hard to dive into each of these things because I know there's so much to it. Is there anything else, as we're wrapping up, that you think people should know about a successful PR program or an influencer program?
I would say that in this time, and it's always changing, so it's hard to put a stamp on it, and it because it's always changing, and it has to change. But I would say to always listen to the generation coming up. And what I love to do is hire interns and hire people who are the generation up and coming. So I like to hire, your Gen Zs, and I'll hire the next generation after that as well, because I always want to learn what I don't know. And I always want to make sure that I'm up with the current trends so that, as we're coming into these new platforms and some things that I still don't know how to utilize, and I don't have a full understanding of, but you're able to tap into that generation to understand it, to make sure that your current client is still being inserted in the trending conversation. It's so important as a PR and marketing firm to stay relevant. And the only way to do that is to make sure you understand that generation. And that's owning that you're not always going to know everything.
Yeah. Okay. Good. One of the things I have a question for you on, because I always ask everybody that comes on the show what you recommend people use in terms of marketing technology. And you're the first, believe it or not, to say Clubhouse. Now, I experienced Clubhouse. I liked it. I mean, it was the format's unique. I could see where they're going with it. What is it that you love about Clubhouse?
So I've utilized it in a very different way. So when I go into those chat rooms, I use it as a networking tool. And I think a lot of people have seen it as and it is called a social network platform, but I think people are using it to talk and listen and learn from one another. And instead, even though I honestly don't have time to sit in those rooms for too long a time. So, and there are those rooms where you're able to kind of quietly network. I don't know if you've seen those rooms, but even aside from those, I add people who I think are relevant. And believe it or not, I've signed 2 clients from Clubhouse. Because I've been able to add them. They follow me back because, depending, you really want to have a really great bio so that they want to follow you back. They know what you're doing, and you start a conversation from there. And if it goes to, what I've done is I've added them on Clubhouse, and I've taken it out of Clubhouse to then add them on LinkedIn. And then the conversation rolls from there. But Clubhouse has been a conversation starter to get to that point.
Okay, so for you, it's used more for recruiting new clients. Have you ever, on your client's behalf, gone on Clubhouse and used it as a PR tool?
Not yet.
Could you foresee that happening? Like hosting a room and inviting a lot of people to it, and you talk about something that's part of that company's ethos or something, or what problems they're solving.
I think this is in terms of that, and that's why I'm using it, I think, so quickly for accounts, that I think it's fleeting in terms of how it's being used from a PR standpoint. I just think because podcasts, for example, have taken precedent, and I just don't understand why you would do Clubhouse when your client has a podcast or can utilize LinkedIn to have a conversation.
Well, maybe because it's on demand. You just show up and host a room. You can't really do that with a podcast. It's not live. I guess you go Facebook Live for something like that. And Clubhouse, not everyone's a member or can get on Clubhouse. So especially if you're an Android, I think, do they start the Android program yet?
They did. Yeah.
Okay.
So now Android, yeah. And that's another thing. Like, I think it was a bit more exclusive when it first started.
Right.
It doesn't seem to be that way anymore. So I wonder, and I also feel, because there were a lot of businesses that came out of the pandemic, and I just, you had to be so careful that you were not just a business that was pandemic. You had to be pandemic proof. Like, what are you going to do past this? Because we are going to get out of this. And I wonder where Clubhouse will go, post COVID.
Yeah. I know a lot of people are going to want to get back out of the house, but I'm hearing a lot of people are going to stay in the house and and not go back to work, but we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah, that's not me. All right. So wrapping things up, Amanda, really want to thank you for joining us today. And I'm sure we're going to have you back for another topic, maybe PR and Clubhouse when it, we test it and we come back and we talk about our success or not.
Yes. Bring me in 2022. I'm here.
All right. Thanks again.
All right. Thank you, Mark.